Language death is not mainstream theater. It is not mainstream anything. Can you imagine Hollywood taking it on? It is so far outside the mindsets of most people that they have difficulty appreciating what the crisis is all about, because they are not used to thinking more about language as an issue in itself. Somehow we need to change these mindsets. We need to get people thinking about language more explicitly, more intimately, more enthusiastically. Interest in language is certainly there. In the general population, most people are fascinated by such topics as where words come from, or what the origin of their town's name is, or whether their baby's name means anything. They are certainly prepared to play Scrabble and a host of other language games ad infinitum, and language games are often found on radio and television, too. But a willingness to focus that interest on general issues, a preparedness to take on board the emotion and drama inherent in the situation of language endangerment, is not something that happens much. When Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web, he surely didn't anticipate that children would end up becoming some of its main users. Most start using the internet at the average age of 3, and as recent research shows, children now spend more time playing and socializing online than watching television programs. Given this change in habits, it is not surprising that a recent House of Lords report has raised online safety and behavior as an important issue. The report said that for children, learning to survive in a world dominated by the internet should be as important as reading and writing. The House of page 304 of 362 Apeoni PTE Monthly Priority Materials Practice PTE with AI Scoring at www.apeoni.com. Lords Communications Committee also warned that children should not be leaving school without a well-rounded understanding of the digital world. It also suggested that the government should think about implementing new legal requirements and a code of conduct companies would have to adhere to, which would help to bring the internet up to child-friendly standards. Of course, trying to rectify this lack of child-centered design is not an easy task, but one that requires the cooperation and goodwill of many sectors. It will need to involve consultation with technology, education, legal and policy experts. And it would also be a good idea to make children and young people part of the process. Rundi considers the YMCA her lifeline, especially the pool. Rundi weighs more than 300 pounds and has borderline diabetes, but she controls her blood sugar and keeps her bright outlook on life by swimming every day for about 45 minutes. Rundi overcame any self-consciousness about her weight for the sake of her health, and those who swim with her and share the open locker room are proud of her. If only the millions of others beset with chronic health problems recognized the inestimable value to their physical and emotional well-being of regular physical exercise. The single thing that comes close to a magic bullet, in terms of its strong and universal benefits, is exercise. Frank Hu, epidemiologist at the Harvard School of Public Health, said in the Harvard magazine, "I have written often about the protective roles of exercise. It can lower the risk of heart attack, stroke, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, depression, dementia, osteoporosis, gallstones, diverticulitis, falls, erectile dysfunction, peripheral vascular disease and 12 kinds of cancer. But what if you already have one of these conditions? Or an ailment like rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, congestive heart failure or osteoarthritis? How can you exercise if you're always tired or in pain or have trouble breathing? Can exercise really help? You bet it can. Marilyn Moffat, a professor of physical therapy at New York University and co-author with Carol B. Lewis of Age-Defying Fitness, conducts workshops for physical therapists around the country and abroad, demonstrating how people with chronic health problems can improve their health and quality of life by learning how to exercise safely. Brooke and her colleague Mark Newman studied who swapped messages with whom on a popular online dating platform in the month of January 2014. They categorized users by desirability using PageRank, one of the algorithms behind search technology. Essentially, if you receive a dozen messages from desirable users, you must be more desirable than someone who receives the same number of messages from average users. Then they asked, how far out of their league do online daters tend to go when pursuing a partner? I think people are optimistic realists. In other words, they found that both men and women tended to pursue mates just 25% more desirable than themselves. So they're being optimistic, but they're also taking into account their own relative position within this overall desirability hierarchy. And the study did have a few more lessons for people on the market. I think one of the take-home messages from this study is that women could probably afford to be more aspirational in their mate pursuit. That brings us to the CEO's second duty, building everyone, or more accurately, building the senior team. All the executives report to the CEO, so it's the CEO's job to hire, fire, and manage the executive team. From coaching CEOs, I actually think this is the most important skill of all. Because when a CEO hires an excellent senior team, that team can keep the company running. When a CEO hires a poor senior team, The CEO is up spending all of their time trying to do with the team, and not nearly enough time trying to do with other elements of their job. The senior team can and often does develop the strategy for the company, but ultimately it's always the CEO who has the final go-no-go decision on strategy. Those of you who've never heard the term Neo-Latin may be forgiven for thinking it's a new South American dance craze. If you're puzzled when I tell you it has something to do with the language of Romans, take heart. Over the years, many classes who have confessed they are not really sure what it is either. Some have assumed that they are so-called Late Latin, written at the end of the Roman Empire. Others have supposed it must have something to do with the Middle Ages. Or perhaps it's that pseudo-Latin which my 5- and 7-year-old boys seem to have gleaned from the Harry Potter books, useful for spells and curses that they zip one another with makeshift paper ash ones. No, in fact, Neo-Latin is more or less the same as the Latin that was written in the ancient world, Classical Latin. So, what's so new about it? Now that story's been scotched as only part of contingency planning. But it was a symptom of the dramatic turn of events in South Australia, and it flushed out other remarks from water academics and people like Tim Flannery, indicating that things were really much worse than had been foreshadowed, even earlier this year. So is Adelaide, let alone some whole regions of South Australia, in serious bother, considering that the vast amount of its drinking water comes from the beleaguered Murray, something many of us outside the state may not have quite realized. Is their predicament something we have to face up to as a nation? Lawrence Steve Lowry, RBSRA, was an English artist. Many of his drawings and paintings depict Pend, Laborie, Lancashire, where he lived and worked for more than 40 years, and also Salford and its surrounding areas. Lowry is famous for painting scenes of life in the industrial districts of northwest England in the mid-20th century. He developed a distinctive style of painting and is best known for his city landscapes peopled with human figures often referred to as Matchstick Man. He painted mysterious unpopulated landscapes, brooding portraits and the unpublished marionette works, which were only found after his death. Along the way, we have built unashamedly beautiful buildings, two of which have won and been runner-up in the prestigious United Nations World Habitat Award, the first time an Australian building has received that international honour. We rely on older concepts of Australian architecture that are heavily influenced by the bush. All residents have private verandas which allow them to socialize outdoors and also create some defensible space between their bedrooms and public areas. We use a lot of natural or soft materials and build beautiful landscaped gardens. What is nanotechnology? Well, a report that was put together by a combination of the Royal Society and the Royal Academy of Engineering that came out last summer identifies two topics. Nanoscience is the study of phenomena and the manipulation of materials at atomic, molecular and macromolecular scales, where properties differ significantly from those at a larger scale. Nanotechnologies are the design, characterization, production and application of structures, devices and systems by controlling shape and size at the nanometer scale. So I'll talk a little bit more in a moment about what a nanometer is. But loosely speaking, people think of nanotechnologies as being a sort of 100 nanometers or less. Why do we need more entrepreneurs right now? The entrepreneurs who create and run our businesses, who play by the rules, are in fact critical to our success as a nation. We need them especially today. Business, not government, will end this recession. Government must help by creating fair rules, sound monetary policy, and by protecting our fellow citizens in periods when they are jobless. We have to make way for the new entrepreneurial firms that will push us to frontiers of innovation. Rebuilding carbon-rich agriculture soils is the only real productive, permanent solution to taking excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. She's frustrated that scientists and politicians don't see the same opportunities she sees. This year Australia will emit just over 600 million tons of carbon. We can sequester 685 million tons of carbon by increasing soil carbon by 0.5% on only 2% of the farms. If we increased it on all of the farms, we would sequester the whole world's emissions of carbon. Green chemistry is a concept designed to develop technologies which allow chemistry to be practiced with minimal damage to the environment, or in an environmentally compatible way, and it's meant to cover both chemical processes and chemical products. The center was set up about 7 or 8 years ago, and the idea was to provide a hub of activities that covered fundamental research work, international collaboration, but also educational development on public understanding of the project as well, and also networking, so we network out to well over 1,000 people around the globe. There are some 250 million cars in America, 250 million cars in the country with just over 300 million people. And most of those vehicles, of course, are gas-powered. This poses a huge challenge given the limited supplies of oil and the growing urgency of the global warming crisis. But there is good news, according to our guests today. And that is we have the know-how and the technology to build sleek, fast automobiles that don't use gasoline. These vehicles of tomorrow are powered by hydrogen, electricity, biofuels, and digital technology. And they already exist. So what's stopping us from putting them on the roads? Our guests today will help answer that. Well, the simple explanation might be that yesterday's sudden drop in share prices pretty much across the board has created what market analysts like to call a buying opportunity. It tends to bring out investors to pick through the ruins, looking for bargains. Decision by investors that sellers got a little carried away with things, so the buyers have lifted all the major indexes today. The Dow, the Nasdaq, the S&P 500 were all up around 0.5% in early trading today, and that wasn't a big surprise. The sell-off continued somewhat. Overseas European markets remain fairly weak, along with many of the Asian markets. But you'll remember that all this started with a big plunge of around 9% on the stock market in Shanghai. Well, Chinese rebounded by around 4%. And one particular crop, almond in the US and now in Australia, is transforming the world of beekeeping and of bees. What has happened is that something serendipitous came along, that people found out, that doctors found out that almonds are good for you, a confection but it's good for you. The almond board got a very aggressive promotion going on for almonds. They actually, I just heard recently, send out sales reps to cardiologists at hospitals to promote the heart benefits of almonds. In a very good promotion of almonds, and it's legitimate promotion because they are a healthy food. It is about 100 years since that great Canadian-born physician Sir William Osler, Regius Professor of Medicine in Oxford, complained about the increasing influence of the pharmaceutical industry on the medical profession. He would be turning in his grave at the way the industry now dominates doctors' prescribing habits. It does this not only by direct and indirect pressure on the doctors themselves, but also by encouraging the public to ask for scripts. Height is correlated with a lot of things. Up to a certain height, taller people make more money than the vertically challenged. And the taller developmental overpopulate almost always wins. Now a study finds that your height as an adult has a profound effect on your perception of your health. Short people judge their health to be worse than average, or tall people judge theirs. The research was published in the journal Repairable Endocrinology. Data for the study came from the 2003 Health Survey for England. More than 14,000 participants filled out questionnaires and had their heights measured. The study only looked at how good the subject thought his or her health was, not their actual health. Questions focused on 5 areas: mobility, self-care, normal activities, pain or reconvert, and anxiety or depression. Men shorter than about 5 feet 4 inches and women shorter than 5 reported the worst impressions. But small increases in height at the low end had much bigger effects on perception than the same increases among taller people. Other studies have shown, ironically, that shorter people on average actually live longer. Classified advertisements placed by individuals in newsprint and magazines are not covered by the Advertising Standards Authority's Code of Practice. If you happen to buy goods that have been wrongly described in such an advertisement, and have lost money as a result, the only thing you can do is bring a case against the person who placed the advertisement for misrepresentation or for breach of contract. In this case, you would use the small claims procedure, which is a relatively cheap way to sue for the recovery of a debt. If you want to pursue a claim, you should take into account whether the person you are suing will be able to pay damages, should any be rewarded. Dishonest traders are wary of this and often pose as private sellers to expose illegal loopholes that exist. That is, they may claim they are not in a position to pay damages. Well, there's a positive obligation on the bank to ensure that the people who are signing a loan guarantee understand what they're doing. Loan guarantees are kind of rare, unique, in that someone is giving security or a guarantee and placing themselves at risk for someone else, and they receive nothing substantial in return. So you've got to ask yourself, why is this person doing this? Do they know what they're doing? They're risking a lot, and not really getting anything back for it. So the imperative is that the bank must establish that these people know what they're doing, and that they fully understand the repercussions of what they're doing, and they know that their assets may be sold if another person doesn't meet their obligations. For some people, this presentation may seem far-fetched, but ending poverty is both ethically necessary and actually feasible. All of us must play a role in making it happen. All human beings want and have a way to live in dignity, to determine our own destinies, and to be respected by other people. Despite the universality of three rights, our capacities to fulfill them vary enormously, and no dividing line is more profound in influencing the quality of our lives than the gulf between poverty and prosperity. There's an old-timer in the neighborhood, and it's got a story to tell. A new study of a relatively nearby star shows that it's almost as bold as the Big Bang itself. The star HD 1,40,283 lies about 190 light-years away in the constellation Libra. Astronomers have long known that it's ancient, because it contrasted mostly hydrogen and helium, which were present at the dawn of the universe, and few of the heavy elements that were forecasted later in stellar furnaces. With the Hubble Space Telescope, researchers have now pinned down the distance to HD 1,40,283, which allowed them to determine how bright the star is. Along with the chemical calibrations of the star, the newly derived stellar properties allowed for a new age estimate. The study of HD 1,40,283 in the Astrophysical Journal Letters found that the star is 14.46 billion years old. But the entire universe, as you may have heard, is only 13.77 billion years old. The two age estimates aren't actually in conflict, because there's always some uncertainty. The full age estimate is thus 14.46 billion years plus or minus 800 million years. BioBonanza is a one-day open house festival. All of the researchers in the Department of Biology are going to be showcasing their research so scholars can come and see research, interact with the researchers, and we want people to be able to interact and have fun of this event. As soon as you walk in the doors, you'll see all sorts of activities, images of how a human heart works. We'll have segments of spinal cord and brain. You'll get to be able to see moths, answer, butterflies, and all sorts of insects. You'll be able to try to catch some local insects, and we'll have activities like wandering through local plant gardens and seeing how photosynthesis works. It's basically all the same thing. A generous plan to cut back Australia's greenhouse gases. And we are, per capita, the biggest carbon polluters on the globe, but it's not carbon trading that will make the first big cuts. Will come from the government's reduced energy policy. Melbourne-based company Carbon Market Economics says the government's 20% target will not only cut pollution, it'll help the economy as well. They may be our cousins, but orangutans and other primates are nowhere near humans in terms of technological accomplishment, social organization or culture. As humans, capacity for building off one another, an interesting part of our so-called cumulative culture that has allowed us to build up so much in so little time. But how do we develop such accurate methods of learning in the first place? Kevin Leyland of the University of St. Andrews spoke with me about his team's quest to pinpoint the social and cultural process that underlie humans' ability to acquire and transfer knowledge. There have been various definitions of happiness throughout history and the history of psychology. Answer: philosophy. The ones which interest me are attitudes to happiness that follow the Enlightenment, particularly in the work of Jeremy Bentham, for whom happiness was really a combination of physical sensations, pleasures as different combinations and aggregations of pleasure and pain occur over time. They create these psychological experiences that Bentham called happiness. But underlying them for Bentham were physical triggers and elements. Dramatic changes in human life support systems took place in the modern world over the last 500 years. Human populations during this time period reached unprecedented sizes and growth rates. Global migrations introduced exotic plants, animals, diseases, technologies, and cultural beliefs throughout the world. The Industrial Revolution and its aftermath transformed ecosystems on an unparalleled scale and intensity. Urban places, spaces, exploded in number and size during the period, and large-scale social systems emerged that were tied together by networks of economic exchange, production and communication. What we are gonna find out today is how it's a bit more demanding than that. Which it always is. I think it's really ordinary. I mean, not being an experimental scientist myself, I have a kind of confusion at the way in which science can continue to upset us by this. People working away in labs, moving on our emotion in ways. Hugo is a cognitive scientist at the French National Center for Scientific Research. Hugo Mercier, 1. Calculations may not be needed in this examination. Calculations may not be needed in this examination. Catch the camera to see the fish. 3. Catch the camera to see the fish. 3. Theory and training are required to become a medical specialist. Theory and training are required to become a medical specialist. The task tomorrow will require higher level skills. The task tomorrow will require higher level skills. Students are permitted to park at campus parking spaces. Students are permitted to park at campus parking spaces. We know very little about the deepest oceans. We know very little about the deepest oceans. Archaeologists are astonished by unexpected previously overlooked foundations. Archaeologists are astonished by unexpected previously overlooked foundations. My technique is to understand the sentence while writing the first letter of each word. My technique is to understand the sentence while writing the first letter of each word. The best student has an opportunity to acquire a scholarship. The best student has an opportunity to acquire a scholarship. Scientists are complex technical advances. Scientists are complex technical advances. The artists and conservative politicians earn their rules of politics. The artists and conservative politicians earn their rules of politics. A celebrated theory is still the source of great controversy. A celebrated theory is still the source of great controversy. A good architectural structure should be usable, durable and beautiful. A good architectural structure should be usable, durable and beautiful. Today a number of students have volunteer jobs. Today a number of students have volunteer jobs. A person's educational level is closely related to his economic background. A person's educational level is closely related to his economic background. A very basic feature of computing is counting and calculating. A very basic feature of computing is counting and calculating. All dissertations must be accompanied with a submission form. All dissertations must be accompanied with a submission form. All the educational reforms have been inadequately implemented. All the educational reforms have been inadequately implemented. An architect is required of problem-solving skills and an eye of design. An architect is required of problem-solving skills and an eye of design. And in that regard, as well as in other regards, it stands as an important contribution. And in that regard, as well as in other regards, it stands as an important contribution. Certain scientific principles must be learned verbally or by a logical deduction. Certain scientific principles must be learned verbally or by a logical deduction. Convincing evidence to support this theory is hard to obtain. Convincing evidence to support this theory is hard to obtain. Daily practice can build confidence and improve skills. Daily practice can build confidence and improve skills. He landed his job in a very prestigious law firm. He landed his job in a very prestigious law firm. I don't think it's possible to solve the problem easily. I don't think it's possible to solve the problem easily. Important details from the argument are missing in the summary. Important details from the argument are missing in the summary. In this language course, we focus on fluency and accuracy. In this language course, we focus on fluency and accuracy. It is important to make clear notes while you are reading. It is important to make clear notes while you are reading. It may not mean that it is possible to solve the problem easily. It may not mean that it is possible to solve the problem easily. Lectures are the oldest and the most formal teaching method at university. Lectures are the oldest and the most formal teaching method at university. Most scientists believe that climate change threatens lives on the Earth. Most scientists believe that climate change threatens lives on the Earth. Packaging is very important to attract the attention of a buyer. Packaging is very important to attract the attention of a buyer. Peer group pressure has a great effect on young people. Peer group pressure has a great effect on young people. Please note, submission deadlines are only negotiable in exceptional circumstances. Please note, submission deadlines are only negotiable in exceptional circumstances. Radio is a popular form of entertainment throughout the world. Radio is a popular form of entertainment throughout the world. Remember, the prestigious election of stewardship has strict eligibility criteria. Remember, the prestigious election of stewardship has strict eligibility criteria. Sea levels are expected to rise during the next century. Sea levels are expected to rise during the next century. Students are encouraged to monitor their own attendance. Students are encouraged to monitor their own attendance. Students requiring an extension should apply sooner rather than later. Students requiring an extension should apply sooner rather than later. Students should have awareness of how the business develops globally. Students should have awareness of how the business develops globally. Students were instructed to submit their assignments by Friday. Students were instructed to submit their assignments by Friday. Studies show there is a positive correlation between two variables. Studies show there is a positive correlation between two variables. 43. The application process may take longer than expected. The application process may take longer than expected. The archaeologists' new discoveries stand out in previously overlooked foundations. The archaeologists' new discoveries stand out in previously overlooked foundations. The chemistry building is located near the entrance of the campus. The chemistry building is located near the entrance of the campus. The city's founders created a set of rules that became laws. The city's founders created a set of rules that became laws. The course helps students to improve their pronunciation skills. The course helps students to improve their pronunciation skills. The curriculum needed to be adjusted for the current development. The curriculum needed to be adjusted for the current development. The designers will complete the plan later today. The designers will complete the plan later today. The director of the gallery was grateful for the anonymous donation. The director of the gallery was grateful for the anonymous donation.